So hello and welcome back to the Level Up Online class, dear students. Okay, so we will before we start with where we had stopped from. So I just would like to revise what we have learned in this past few classes. Okay, so we were dealing with the chapter number one, resources and development. So in this chapter we have already discussed and learned what is meant by resource. I've given you several examples. Okay, and in this chapter we have also seen what are the different types of resources, the classification of resources on basis of origin, on the basis of exhaustibility, on the basis of ownership, and on the basis of status of development. Okay, we have seen all these things in detail, okay, in the previous classes, and we have also discussed. This is where we had stopped. The topic where we had stopped last time was resources, development of resources. Okay, so in this chapter we have discussed the importance of resources for human survival. How is resources important for human beings? How have resources made the lives of humans so easy and comfortable? Okay, and how have we humans responded to resources? How have we paid back to the resources? Okay, till now we know that we are dependent on resources, and resources has given the the luxury and the comfort of lives. But have we humans been able to give back what the resources have given us, or are we just taking advantage of the resources available? Okay, and we have also discussed the different types of difficulties, problems that arises when we try to misuse the resources, when we don't try to respect the resources available. Okay, we only try to look into our zone, our comfort zone, but we haven't ever tried to understand what will happen. Perhaps we do understand at times, but our greed is such that we go blind. Okay, and we try to exploit the resources, we try to deplete the resources, and we try to satisfy our needs and our greeds just to accumulate wealth which is of no use. So we have seen what happens when we uh, accumulate resources into just few hands. What happens, how it divides the society into two different segments, haves and the have nots, rich and the poor. Okay, what happens when we use the resources indiscriminately without carelessly? What happens? What are the different global crises that arises, like global warming, the ozone layer depletion, pollution, land degradation, soil erosion? These are the different problems that arises. And then we have also discussed the world perspective, the international view of you know on resources. What will happen when we use the resources at a very rapid rate? Okay, we have also discussed on what is a sustainable development. Sustainable development means simple. Okay, development not at the cost of someone's life, be it human being or be it nature. Development cannot be taken forward risking some lives, be it animals, be it nature, be it human. It has to you know sustain. Development has to sustain every lives. Okay, we cannot be selfish. Okay, so development has to come without hampering the environment, without hampering the lives. Hmm? You cannot say I want to develop my own village by destroying the nature. This cannot be a development. Okay, you are developing your village, but at the very same time you are also destroying your village. You cannot say I'm developing by destroying your village. Okay, so sustain this means sustainable development. Sustainable development means development cannot hamper or cannot destroy the nature. Okay, now, and then we have also discussed how the international how the big nations have had come together in the year 1992 at Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit. This was the first Earth Summit, International Earth Summit, okay, wherein wherein these big nations had discussed on the various issues related to environmental protection and socio-economic development at the global level. Okay, and we have also discussed what were the different agendas being discussed. One of the main agenda was Agenda 21, and we have also discussed the Agenda 21. What is Agenda 21? What are the different agendas in this Agenda 21? Okay. There were like they have to take care of the environmental damages being done. They also discussed poverty, diseases, different diseases, and the global cooperation. Okay. So and the general interest. Okay. So this is where we had stopped. Okay, and we had lastly, before we ended up, we also discussed that the international, the big nations that had attended this very summit had urged all the nations, all the local governments to have their own local Agenda 21. Okay, so so the next subtopic we will just discuss a very small subtopic today. Okay, so the next subtopic is resource planning. So now, what is resource planning? Okay, now resource planning is something like, for example, if you want to throw a party, say your wedding, what do? You cannot directly throw a party. You have to plan out everything, right? How will you do your wedding celebration? Where will be the venue? How many guests you will be inviting? What are the different menus that will be prepared? And what beautiful dress you will be wearing out? Okay, so this is planning is very important for any sort of activity that we do. So likewise, resource planning is something wherein we plan out the resources. How do we use the resources available? How do we uh, uh, not exploit the resources? How do we use this resource in a very systematic way, so that we are not you know lacking in resources after some years? This is a very strategic way of planning out resources. Okay, so now when we talk about resource planning, and if we focus India in this very subtopic, India is a very large, large nation. It is very vast, and there are there's a variety of resources available. Okay, and it is very India is a diverse country. Likewise, there is a diversity of resources. Okay, so but there are some regions which have a you know huge abundance of resources, whereas at the very same time some regions are lacking in these resources. They don't have any resources, because some are facing shortage of resources. Okay, some states are self sufficient. Some states are self sufficient in terms of resources. Matlab, you know uh, some states, some regions, there are available resources. They are self sufficient. They don't want to be dependent on others. But at the very same time, there are some regions which don't have any resources, or rather they have very few amount of resources. They have to be dependent on some other states. Okay? Like here, for example, states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Madhya Pradesh are rich in minerals and coal deposits. Okay, like at the very same time, our state, Arunachal Pradesh, is abundance. We have abundance of water resources, but we lack in infrastructure development. Now, this is something very important. We will be learning this in our next topic. Okay? Resource and development, it should go hand in hand. In order to meet the general development. Okay. Now, like it is said here, Arunachal Pradesh, okay, it has abundance of water resources, but we lacking infrastructure development. That's the reason we are not able to, have our own hydroelectricity. We are still dependent on states like Assam for, energy, for electricity. If we had proper infrastructure development in our state, we need not be dependent on Assam for electricity. We could have our own. state generated. We could be self-sufficient in terms of electricity. Okay, but we're lacking in infrastructure there. So this is something. Now, so we will move on to the next topic. Okay, now this is also another very important subtopic. Now, resource planning in India. So we have discussed what we have just briefly understood what is a resource planning. Okay, now we will go into detail. How do we do resource planning in India? Okay, what are the different steps that needs to be taken when we are doing a resource planning? Okay, now resource planning is something it is not a very easy thing. It is a complex process. Okay, because you are dealing with resource for the whole country. So it has to have some scientific method. There is systematic strategy should be taken to you know do resource planning. Okay, so there are different steps that needs to be followed up when we are doing a resource planning. So the very first thing is you have to identify the resources. You have to make an inventory of like what are the resources available. Okay, this is very important. You have to first identify, and then you have to make an you have to just note down what are the resources available in which regions. Okay, then you have this involves this process identification and inventory का मतलब क्या है like क्या क्या चीज अवेलेबल है वो उसको नोट डाउन करना. ठीक है, आइडेंटिफिकेशन मतलब उसको आइडेंटिफाई करना क्या क्या रिसोर्सेज. Now, identification and inventory, okay, this involves different steps like survey, mapping, qualitative and quantitative estimation, and measurement of resources. Now, for identifying and making an inventory, survey is very important. You have to make a survey of what are the resources and where are the resources available. You have to draw a map of where are the resources available, right? And then you have to find out the quality of the resources. Very important. You have to know the quality of resources. Okay. Now, if the quality of the resources is not so good, then it is of no point of investing money in extracting that particular resource. Okay, and the amount, the quantity, the amount of resource available on that particular region is important. Okay, then the next step is evolving a planning structure endowed with appropriate technology, skill, and institutions. Okay, now, now once you have identified and once you have made an inventory of the resources in a particular region, the second part is you have to follow a proper planning structure of how do you get over there, how do you extract the resources from that region. Now, in order to extract the resources, you have to have proper technology, equipment. You have to be well equipped with technologies in order to uh, extract the resource from that region. And you have to have a proper skill of extracting that region resources from that region. Without skill, it is very it becomes difficult to extract. You need to have that skill of extracting. And institutions after extracting, how do you go about it? What do you do with that? You put into different institutions for socio-economic development. Okay, and the last one is matching the resource development plans with overall national development plan. Now, suppose Arunachal, we have, say for example, abundance of water resources. We will have our own resource plan, our state resource plan. At the very same time, there is something called national resource plan. So our plan, our resource plan should match with the national resource plan. We cannot have our own independent resource plan. Okay? It has to match with the national resource plan, because ultimately, developing Arunachal means developing India in general. Okay, that is why it is important. Okay, now let us go back to the past of how India has, taken different steps, different government measures, okay, to develop the resource or to plan out the resource. Now, if you go back to history, okay, India was ruled. This is before independence, okay, pre-independence. Before India could gain independence, India was ruled by the British for about 200 years. So in these 200 years, India was, you know, abundantly blessed with natural resources. But what happened in these 200 years? India was looted by the British. All the resources that India was gifted with, okay, was taken away by the British. Right? So after independence, after 1947, okay, India came up with something, some strategic plans. It was known as 5-year plan. Okay, now what is 5-year plan? So the name itself, gives you the meaning. 5-year plan. It means 5-year plans. So it was given 5-year time frame. So in this 5-year plan, what are the different areas that will be focused in terms of development? Say for example, resource planning. So 5 years में क्या करना है? How do we plan the resources in this given 5-year time frame? Say health. So how do we take care of the health in this 5-year plan? Okay. So the first 5-year plan was something very important, very crucial. Okay. It focused on different areas, health, economic. Okay. तो 5 years टाइम दिया गया था कि 5 years में हम लोगों को कैसे प्लान करना है डेवलपमेंट के लिए, right? And so now the next part is now availability of resources. मतलब resources available होना सिर्फ important नहीं. Okay. Now suppose Arunachal like we have already discussed, Arunachal is abundantly blessed with water resources. But what is the use of that resources in abundance if we don't have parallel infrastructural development? It is of no use. So mere availability of resources is as good as not having it, because we are lacking in infrastructural development. We are not able to extract electricity from the water resources. Okay, so it is very important. Resources available भी होना है, plus infrastructural development भी होना है. This is very important. Okay, otherwise it is of no use. Okay, फिर बाद में क्या होगा, कोई और लेके चला जाएगा उसको. This is what has been happening in our state for the past many years. Okay, so if you don't have proper infrastructural development, it stops development in a way. Okay, it prevents development, it obstructs the development. Okay, so in our country there are states which are rich in resources, but they lack in infrastructural development. They lack in technologies. Like our own state of Arunachal, we have abundance of water resources, but we are lacking in technologies. That's the reason we are not able to utilize the abundance of water resources available. So and on the other hand, there are states which are which are advanced in technology, but they don't have resources. Okay. Okay. So we are just coming to the last part of the subtopic. So now, if you look into history of India, okay, India was, as I have told you, India was ruled by the British for about 200 years. Okay, so in this, British rule, India was divided into different small colonies, which was known as colonization. Colonization का मतलब सिंपल है कि small colonies, जैसे कि हम लोग का यहाँ पे होता है ना, अब जैसे कि अपना बस्ती में डिस्ट्रिक्ट में ले लो तो small colonies होता है, right? अपना अपना colonies का नाम होता है. The same thing, India was divided into small colonies. Okay, and in this small colony, now, okay, the history of colonization reveals that rich resources in colonies were the main attraction for foreign invaders. Okay. Now, in these small colonies, there were abundance of resources. Now, what happens when there is abundance of resources? You attract मतलब किसी को attract मतलब you understand, right? Attract मतलब किसी को ललचाना, right? Attract करना, attention seek करना. Now there were abundance of resources in these small colonies, so it attracted the foreign invaders. जितना भी foreign का companies था, they got attracted, and so that's the reason, they exploited the resources. So it was primarily the higher level of technological development of the colonizing countries that helped them to exploit resources of other regions and establish their supremacy over the colonies. Now, India was rich in resources, but it was lacking in technological development. So what happened? We were rich in resources, but we were lacking in, development, technological development. So what happened? जो बाहर का जो नेशंस था, ब्रिटिश लोगों के पास रिसोर्सेस नहीं था, लेकिन उनके पास क्या था? टेक्नोलॉजी था। तो उन्होंने क्या किया? उन्होंने अपना टेक्नोलॉजी लाया इंडिया में, और इंडिया का रिसोर्सेस को टेक्नोलॉजी के सहारे लेके चला गया। We Indians, why we were not able to, make use of our own resources in India? Because we were lacking in technological developments. We didn't have machines that time. मशीन्स उनके पास था, ब्रिटिश के पास, तो उन्होंने अपना मशीन लाया, रिसोर्सेज को लेके चला गया। So okay, so this is what we need to understand. Resources and technological development should go hand in hand. एक कम एक ज्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए, ठीक है? So therefore resources can contribute to development only when they are accompanied by appropriate technological development. Okay, India has no. So that is why this is very important. Okay? Now when we have resources but we don't have technological developments, तो डेवलपमेंट कभी, सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट कभी नहीं आएगा। ओके, अगर हम लोगों के पास रिसोर्सेज है तो हम लोगों के पास टेक्नोलॉजिकली भी डेवलप होना बहुत जरूरी है, तभी हम लोग ओवरऑल डेवलपमेंट हो पाएगा। अगर हम लोगों के पास रिसोर्स है लेकिन टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं है, तो जिसके पास टेक्नोलॉजी है बाहर का, वो आके हम लोग का रिसोर्स लेके चला जाएगा। ओके, सो दिस इज व्हाट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड, राइट? Okay, so we end up our class here. This was very easy and a very small subtopic. So if you didn't understand anything, please ask me. Thank you.